Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. So my name's Alex Harvey and I'm VP Sales here with Space Store, and really excited to be talking you through this short discussion this afternoon about returning to the workplace, so returning to the office or returning to the workplace, and some of the insights and solutions that Space Store can share with you that we've discovered or worked with some of our other clients, and some ideas around how you could develop return to workplace strategies for your clients and for your projects. So as I said, my name is Alex Harvey and I'm VP of Sales. A brief introduction to Space Store in case you haven't met Space Store before. So Space Store are creators of workplace furniture that's a blend of California cool and London design, as you can see on the screen there. And that reflects our background and heritage and roots in the workplace and design industry here in the UK and in London, as well as more recently over the last 8 to 10 years, our experience in California working with many of our clients and now nationally across the US, which neatly brings us on to the whole reason for this event today, which is part of the NYC by Design, the New York Design Week. Space Store are very pleased to be taking part in a design festival which is blended virtual and physical. So we had our New York showroom open for design tours yesterday, which was very exciting. First physical design festival that we've had since February last year or March last year. So the NYC by Design Week and the design days is something that we've been taking part in, and really showcasing our New York Design Center and the whole concept behind that. What Gensler, the designers of the space, really developed was an experiential workplace where the concept of discovering the unexpected unfolds as you use the space. So the whole space is designed to encourage collaborative experimentation, the discovery through multiple layers of meaning, and ultimately delivering a very immersive experience for users of the space, which of course is designed to inspire users and designers of the space to the flexibility and the capabilities of workplace furniture solutions, where used in unconventional ways, both the architectural zoning as well as high focus individual areas and collaborative areas. So the whole concept of the experiential workplace is, I think, an important segue into the return to the office, because I think what we're finding with many of our clients is that the return to the office isn't just about the function or the job or the task to be done for that individual person. It's very much around the connection that those people have with their peers, with their colleagues, and also the types of bigger picture discovery and collaboration roles that are happening. So what I'd like to do is share some of the workplace research that Space Store have done with our clients, with many of our clients, as well as the experiences we've had around practical solutions for return to the office. Now, of course, we recognize that wherever you are globally, you'll be at a different point in that roadmap or journey to returning to the office. For us here in the UK, the big date is the 21st of June, assuming everything continues on a positive vein from the vaccine rollout. That's the big date for us in terms of the lockdown and the restrictions being lifted. And for many organizations, that's a date they're targeting for return to the workplace or return to the office. Now, of course, every organization has their own viewpoint on that, and the header on this slide here, the hybrid workplace, is certainly something we're hearing from many clients. A hybrid working methodology where you may be based in the office a few days each week or a few days each month, and you may be working elsewhere, whether it's from home or some other location, for a few days. So we're definitely seeing that emerging as a preferred option for many clients and for many roles within the clients that we work with. And that in itself brings a number of challenges, which we'll discuss in a second. But just referencing the data on the slide in front of you, a few other interesting things that jumped out at me were on the top right, the experimentation that's happening in the workplace. And really what we're seeing with many clients is a lot of thought, a lot of discovery around what we think is going to work, and maybe surveying staff and that kind of thing around what we think is going to work, but also a preparedness that actually some of these things we're just trying, that they are an experiment. They're not necessarily going to be the finished article. They're not necessarily going to be perfect, and that's okay. It's actually all right for us to experiment with something, and if it doesn't work, to change it, to adjust it, and to adapt it to how the feedback comes. And then a few other interesting points there was the personal storage lockers being perceived to be a very important part of the return to the office, which kind of brings us on to the first product I wanted to chat through, the Space Store hot locker product. And where we see that fitting into the return to the office with many of our clients is focused on that hybrid working method, where people may be based in a number of different locations depending on the type of task they're doing, and maybe depending on the type of collaboration they're working on, which means you kind of have no place in the office that you can call your own. There's no place where you can leave all the stuff that you would normally leave on your desk or maybe inside your pedestal. There's no single place where you can store all of that stuff, whether it's your chargers and charging cables, or maybe the documents and files you're working on. And one interesting point we're seeing with many clients actually is the keyboard and mouse that you use at your workstation. So whilst the desk itself may be used by different users each day, and obviously there's a cleaning regime to make sure that there's a level of comfort around that, people aren't happy sharing the keyboard and mouse with the other users of that desk, and that then means that keyboard and mouse has to be stored somewhere within their personal storage. And we're definitely seeing that personal storage element being a key pivot point between the different hybrid working methods or locations. So storing your keyboard and mouse and creating the locker that's the right size for the type of keyboard and mouse that organization uses, whether it's the right width or the right depth. Particularly, I'll pull up my keyboard here with the kind of type of keyboard they might be using. Typically we see that being slid into the locker front to back. And often it's really useful to have a little shelf, maybe an inch or two down from the top of the locker, so the keyboard and mouse can sit at the very top without being crushed by the bags and everything else you've got going on inside your locker. So that's just one small practical tip in the use of workplace lockers. Another thing that we're seeing with many of our clients is the customization of the right kind of locker to suit their requirements. And that has a number of different angles to it. It has obviously the functional angle. So for many of our clients, we're discussing the width, the depth, the height of the locker, and with the variety of locker sizes Space Store have as standards, as well as the opportunity to create a custom size, we can create a unique locker that works for that individual client and their way of working and their requirements. So as I say, we've got a wide variety of standards, and we can customize as well. So that gives you a huge amount of flexibility around the locker size. And then, of course, there's the design and aesthetic of the lockers. So you'll see on the slides in front of you a huge amount of variety in the look and feel of these lockers, whether it's different colors, whether it's in wood grains and plies and veneers, whether it's in some of the kind of more eye-catching graphics, really making a feature of the locker fronts. Many different options there. And then finally, the other thing that's also really important is the functionality, or how those lockers are going to be used. And particularly I'm thinking of the way that the locking mechanism can support your workplace strategy. So whether we're looking at an assigned locker where an employee owns an individual locker and that will always be their locker whenever they come into the office, or more of a self-service type locker where maybe they pick a locker and use it when they're in the office, but if they're only in the office 2 or 3 days a week, they don't necessarily need to have the same locker every time they come in. They can just choose a locker that's available. So there's a number of different options there, and that really is driven by the lock technology. And there's a number of different lock suppliers or manufacturers that Space Store work with, both the mechanical type locks, whether it's a key lock or a combination lock, through the more advanced battery operated, again, punch code or key code locks, or using a swipe card, an employee badge or an RFID card, through to the more fully advanced software-based systems where we're using either an app on your smartphone, again the employee badge is sometimes used, and the ability to have real-time reporting around who's using which lockers and when, who's actually occupying those lockers, so we can start to see, you know, the quantity of lockers and the occupancy right now, and how that is impacting on maybe the availability of lockers for other users, or perhaps the fact that, you know, that locker over there has been left locked for 3 months, so we can drill down and see who's using it and when. Maybe it was a visitor to the office who used that locker and then no longer requires it, so we can get some real-time visibility. So that's the locker solution. And then moving on to the next product that I wanted to chat through was the Space Store Palisades family. Now, this has been a consistently very popular product since we launched the Palisades family right back in 2015, so nearly 6 years now. This is a product which we've seen being used throughout the workplace as effectively as a space or a zone divider. But again, what's really key is that this is the ability to divide those spaces, but without building walls. So without having to physically build walls, with the disruption, the downtime, and often the permanence that brings, as well as the impact around, you know, MEP and ventilation systems. So the point of the Palisades product very originally was around dividing different types of space, but without the permanence of building walls. And of course, you'll recognize that that's a really important conversation with the current post-COVID workplaces, dividing space, whether it's dividing, you know, one team from another, a marketing team from a sales team, or maybe a task working area from a chill out space or a breakout space. That's very much part of the conversation with many of our clients. And just reflecting back on what we were saying earlier around experimentation, that element of kind of modularity and non-permanence means that we can actually dismantle, reconfigure, change around, you know, experiment with the types of space division and the locations of that space division without it having a permanent impact on the workplace. So there is that kind of built-in flexibility in some of the experiments that our clients are doing. And of course, the other thing with space division or zone division is also the space division from one individual to the next. And, you know, we've heard a lot of conversations around the plexiglass screen dividers that sit on desks. Personally, I don't think we've seen a huge amount of clients actually going down that route. And as people are going back to the office, we are seeing tangible activity around people adjusting their workplaces to suit the post-COVID, their intentions for the post-COVID workplace. And this doesn't appear to be a key part of it for many of our clients, but of course everyone has their own perspective and their own set of risks that they're trying to manage. So there is an option with the Palisades product, as you'll see in the bottom left hand side of the screen, for an individual space divider, which can then be repurposed to make more of a zone divider in the future, should that become no longer required. And then finally moving on to the third product, which is product that Space Store have launched only recently, earlier part of this year, the Resonance Connect. So this is the next product in a line of, or a generation of, very successful acoustic private working or individual working pods that Space Store have launched over the last 3 to 4 years. But the Resonance Connect has a fundamental difference from every other pod that you will see out there on the market, in that all of the other pods that you've seen out there are, particularly thinking of the single person pods, all those pods are effectively what you would term a telephone pod or a phone pod, which means they're designed for use for somebody who may be in there for 20 minutes, maybe up to an hour, 40 minutes to an hour at a stretch. And that means the ergonomic environment is either usually a stand-up type situation, or sometimes sitting on a stool or a perch of some sort. But what we're seeing with the requirements post-COVID is that with many clients, the increased usage of video platforms for meetings and for team meetings is going to continue because of the hybrid workplace situation we talked about earlier, where, you know, different members of the team are going to be working from different locations at any point in time. There's going to be an increase in video meetings, an increase in distributed teams. which will continue even once people are returning to the office. So the point of the Residents Connect was to create the ultimate user experience for video meetings, and this product was designed from the ground up with that in mind. And what that means is we've created a larger overall footprint, so you've got the ability to firstly have a bit of space around you, and secondly to use an ergonomic task chair when you're using that pod for a video type meeting. And with many of our clients, we're hearing, this is 1 hour, sometimes 2 or 3 hours at a time, or sometimes individual back-to-back meetings, which will stretch out to 3 or 4 hours. So people are often in those video meetings for a lot longer period of time. And if you cast your mind back to what we were saying earlier around the phone pods, sitting on a stool or a perch or in a stand-up type situation for 3 hours is really not going to be good for the user in terms of their concentration, their focus, their ability to participate effectively within that meeting. So the user experience has been a really important part of the development of this product, as well as, of course, the equity of access and usage. So we've focused very much around how we can make the video pod the best user experience for any and every user. So you'll see at the top of the screen there that we have a wheelchair accessible version, for example. So we've designed a powered access door with a level threshold, or less than a 1/4 inch threshold, giving a wheelchair user the ability to have an effective video meeting just the same as any other user of the pod. And an important part of that was also understanding the impact of the video hardware and software on users with every different skin color or skin tone, so that you don't get an inferior digital experience for any individual user. So we've had to focus very much around the lighting, the way the lighting is configured. So with this particular product, instead of having the typical pod experience, you'd have the lighting above you shining down, which tends to cast shadows on your face, particularly with somebody with darker skin tones. And that means we're losing the benefit of the facial expressions of that person and their participation in the meeting. So we've changed the fundamental design of the lighting so that it's actually behind the monitor, and it's what we call non-directional bias lighting. So it's actually behind the monitor and then reflecting off the wall of the pod onto your face. And again, the materials and colors that we've used and the surfaces we've used internally have an impact on the video experience. So we've tried to work really hard, as I hope you're hearing, we've tried to work really hard around creating the best and most equitable digital experience for everybody, so that your digital representation on screen is the best it can be. And of course, people can participate as effectively as they can do within the meeting and within the type of collaboration they're having. And then another important part of that is what we call the cockpit table. So the table itself with the height adjustable table surface, and then independently height adjustable monitor. So again, for a wheelchair user, they could drop it down to 27 inches if they wanted to, and adjust the monitor to suit their specific requirements. Or somebody who wanted to use the pod as a stand-up pod, if they wanted to, could adjust it right the way up, and it would suit somebody who's 6'6" or 7 foot tall as a stand-up desk. So you've got that wide variety of adjustment and adjustability. And then finally, on the Residents Connect, another really important part of the design and development of this product was the whole focus that we've taken on sustainable materials and the environmental impact of the product. So of course, the product in itself is an environmental benefit because it reduces carbon footprint and travel. It enables better video meetings so people don't have to travel in the same way. But also the materials that we've used. So we focus very much around removing red listed materials. So by way of an example, we've had to relook at the acoustic seals. Many of the acoustic seals you'll find out there in the market and products in similar products are a PVC type material, which, as you'll know, is not a good product, a good material to use from an environmental standpoint. So we've re-engineered and retooled all of our acoustic seals in a silicone, which is a lot more environmentally, a lot less harmful to the environment. And that's just one example. We've worked very hard around reducing or removing the formaldehyde or added formaldehyde content to the materials that are used, so that we've got a very low VOC emission factor to this product. So many different elements that we've had to work on to make this a really sustainable and healthy product, so that, of course, when you're working on LEED or BREEAM or WELL type projects, you've got the ability to use this product and to boost the environmental credentials of your project. So that brings us to the end of the insights and product element of today's discussion. Happy to stay online for the next few minutes if there's any questions you want to either pop into the chat box or unmute and ask. But before we do that, also on the slide you'll see an invite to join SpaceStore on our next Insights live discussion. That's 3rd of June, where we will be collaborating with workplace leaders, with thought leaders and workplace strategy leaders within the workplace industry, discussing the future of work. And I noticed Heather just dropped into the chat box a link for you to be able to register, and hopefully you will join us then. So that's the June the 3rd. And as I say, I'll be staying online for another 3 or 4 minutes if there's any questions you want to ask. If not, again, thank you very much for joining today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and having you with us, and hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.